This is the final video in a 10-part documentary on the Count of Saint Germain. In the previous videos, we've covered 1 through 7, including a complete deciphering of the triangular book. And this is where the documentary ends and the conspiracy begins. And I guarantee you, you haven't heard this theory about Saint Germain. That being said, it's going to get a little bit dark, so viewer discretion is advised. We're going to be getting into topics such as the Missing411, human abductions, its connections possibly to Freemasonry, death, rebirth, the incarnations and reincarnations. So a lot of these topics admittedly are a little bit uncomfortable, so fair warning on that. However, in this final video, I will cover the Trinosophia a little bit, his disappearances, alternate identities, and the different people that they say Saint Germain was throughout history. So there are some references to him essentially physically disappearing into thin air. Let's take a look at those real quick. In his intro to the Trinosophia, Manly Hall says, "By something akin to telepathy, this remarkable person was able to feel when his presence was needed in some distant city or state, and it has even been recorded of him that he had the disconcerting habit of appearing in his own apartments and those of his friends without resorting to the conventionality of the door." So this is saying that he just appears in his friends' apartments and appears in his own apartment. In The Secret of Kings, he was the Obermeier of many mystic brotherhoods, where he was worshipped as a superior being and where everyone believed in his sudden appearances and equally sudden disappearances. So once again, there was a common belief in his day that Saint Germain suddenly appeared and disappeared. Now, the Countess de Ademir doesn't give very good dates in her diary, but she did have this written in her diary that she had a meeting with Saint Germain after 1784, which was the date when he supposedly died. And so she says, "I haven't heard or spoken of him in many long years, and he suddenly reappeared." Of course, using the word reappeared. And turning through the conversation, he's talking to her about the king and the queen. And then he departed. And this is the Countess de Ademir. So she has a guard by her door. And Saint Germain would have just walked past him. So she's questioning her guard. "Didn't Saint Germain go out just now? He passed close by to you." And the guard said, "I must have been distracted. I didn't notice him." "It is impossible, Laroche. You were joking." And he says, "The worst of times are the more respectful I am to the madame." "What, by this door close to you? Hasn't he passed?" "I do not mean to deny it, but he did not strike my eye." "Then he has made himself invisible. I am lost in astonishment." These are the last words that the Countess de Ademir writes in connection to the Comte de Saint Germain. So that's one account from Countess de Ademir that says he basically disappeared into thin air because the guard would have seen him leaving. And one more small reference to that. Saint Germain, having spoken without taking a breath, turned towards the door, shut it, and disappeared. All efforts to find the Count failed. So not quite as significant as a disappearance here. But he did walk out a door, shut it, disappeared, and they couldn't find him. And all efforts to find the Count, again, this is the royalty. So the king, he would have all of his resources looking for Count, and they were unable to find him. The Trinosophia. Now, this is a really interesting book, and I'm not going to be able to do a full analysis on it like I did the triangular book. However, I am going to use it to draw a very interesting conspiracy. The problem with this book is the manuscript incorporates an eclectic mix of esoteric symbolism and ciphers drawn from several of the occult schools, including alchemy and Hebraic Kabbalah. The illustrations contain texts composed in a variety of ancient languages, as you can see here. And we're dealing not only with a cipher message, but a ciphered message in multiple ancient languages. And much of the symbolism incorporates concepts independent of any known linguistic expression. In short, the Trinosophia is an anomaly. and one of the most profound and challenging of all esoteric manuscripts. There are diverse theories regarding what constitutes the key theme of the work, ranging from an allegorical Masonic initiation to a prophecy relating to the end of the world, to that it being a modern version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, this book, which hypothesizes this is a 1750s version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, is pretty interesting and has a lot of merit. However, a translation of the Book of the Dead did not appear until after 1830 with the deciphering of the Rosetta Stone. So if Saint Germain wrote a Book of the Dead in 1750, that is very significant because nobody knew what the Egyptian Book of the Dead said until 100 years after he was here. At the end of the book, there is cipher that is very similar to what we've seen in the triangular book, but these are definitely different characters. And while the ciphers here are very intriguing, and it looks like there's an Elvis right here, but nevertheless, I have not been able to crack these ciphers. And if you read Manly Hall's book on the Trinosophia, he has deciphered some of these messages, at least to the best of his ability, and I'd have to take his word on it. Now, I am going to give my interpretation on what some of this book means here. Specifically in regards to death and rebirth, we can see the person coming out of the coffin here. So in regards to that, let's cover just some of the different reincarnations or incarnations that they say are attributed to Saint Germain. The difference being a death. So with a reincarnation, you would die, your soul leaves the body, then you come back into a baby's body and you're born and start a new life. Talking of Francis Bacon, Prince Rakoczy, and the Count of Saint Germain, Prince Udny claims that each one was a different incarnation, not a reincarnation. So the difference is that with a incarnation, you never died. You just went into a different body. Here it says that he was the Comte de Saint Germain in the 18th century, Bacon in the 17th, Robertus the monk in the 16th, Hyundai Janos in the 15th, and Christian Rosicrucians in the 14th, to take a few of his incarnations. Now, we can recall that Saint Germain was a yogi. He was definitely caught in lotus pose, meditating, and he was in India and talking about his retreat in the Himalayas. So he was obviously a yogi. We've covered that in chapter 4. One thing I've often read about in ancient yoga texts, for example, this one, which is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it says that the foremost among yogis, his mind is in intense concentration. His inspired speech flows like a stream of clear water. And he is able to, at will, to enter another's body. He gains the power by which he may render himself invisible, fly across the sky, and other similar powers. It may also mean another man's body. Here's the translation of the Sanskrit. By relaxing one's attachment to the body and becoming profoundly sensitive to its currents, consciousness can enter another's body. That is the description of an incarnation, that your consciousness is going into another person's body. Practical yoga, ancient and modern, there is an actual example of this. The mind can enter another's body when there is a loosening of the causes of bondage and also knowledge of the procedure. I remember well a statement, which I was not in a position to verify, about an expert in yoga who was getting old and thinking of letting go of the body. It happened just then that a boy was drowned somewhere in the Punjab. The expert saw this by clairvoyance. So he was in meditation out of body, seen the boy drowned. Saw also that the boy's body was suitable. Two things then happened. The expert died very suddenly, and the boy was resuscitated and showed new and striking traits of character, which later led him to give up the normal course of life and join some yogis living further north. Now, further north is the Himalayas, where Saint Germain said he was going. But we can make one of two assumptions. This is either complete nonsense, or it's true. If it's true, we have a perfect explanation for how Saint Germain lived for hundreds of years. He was already a yogi, so he was an expert in esoteric studies. So it's entirely possible that what he did was exactly what's described here. He was getting old, thinking of letting go of the body, and transferred into one of a younger person. There's only one problem with this, and that is your memory, because they say that our memory is saved inside of the brain. So if he went into another person's body, wouldn't his memory be gone? Wouldn't his knowledge be lost? Essentially, he would have a form of amnesia. He would totally forget who he was, where he had been, and that made me think about the Missing411. So if you're not familiar with Missing411, it's that David Paulides has the Canam Missing Project, where he covers a plethora of missing people who go missing, sometimes are found under mysterious circumstances. And for him, he's blaming it essentially on UFOs or Bigfoot. That's kind of the vibe I get from him. I don't think that's the case myself. Let me propose a theory that Masons are involved with some of these abductions and missing people. First of all, you've got the missing truckers. There's a whole series on missing truckers. Those are all men. Then there's the amnesia playlist. There's 25 of them here. People who have gone missing and come back with complete amnesia. They don't remember anything about, not even who they are. They can't even remember their own name. None of that. And the funny thing is that every single one of these, I think except one, are all men. If there's an amnesia case, maybe one or two of them are women. The rest of them are men. Why is that important? Because men are the only ones allowed in Freemasonry. Now, let's say for a second that this theory is true, that Saint Germain, being high in Freemasonry, wants to let go of his body and go into a boy with a suitable body. What would he need? Well, he would need a young boy who had just recently died. You can tell with the yoga story, the boy had just drowned and essentially his body was still warm when the yogi transferred into it. So if you were going to do this, you would basically need, I'm sorry for getting a little bit morbid here, you would need a recently deceased young person, unfortunately. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the Pizzagate scandal and all of this, but there's a connection here, essentially. And it could be an explanation for the amnesia. So currently there is no explanation for why these people come back with amnesia. No one has a clue why. And I realized, again, like I mentioned earlier with the memory, if you were to go into someone else's body, does your memory go with you? If so, does the other person's memory get destroyed in the process? In this book, with all the reincarnation and incarnation of Francis Bacon, they're assuming that when Francis Bacon incarnated as Saint Germain, that his memory and his knowledge came with him because he still continued to do his Masonic work. So somehow in this transferring from one body to another to take on a new incarnation, somehow memory and knowledge from the brain transfers with them. And so I don't know what these amnesia cases are, but I'm hypothesizing that Freemasons are abducting these men and essentially trying to do a body swap into their body. the process of which they lose their memory. And for whatever reason, some of these guys, almost every one of them in the amnesia case, is found on the side of a highway. So whatever reason that the Masonic Lodge things didn't work out, the body swap didn't happen, they tossed the guy in a ditch. He doesn't remember anything. There's a whole lot of cases of this happening with no explanation as to why it does. Now, just when you're saying that this is impossible, Freemasons don't abduct people, let's remember the Carl Higdon abduction in 1974, where the entities showing up who abducted him were wearing aprons with a 6-pointed star on it.
The entity was wearing black shoes and a wide belt, with a 6-pointed star where the buckle would be, and a yellow symbol below it on a type of small apron.
There's a book on it, and you can see the 6-pointed star with an apron. Now, just to be fair, the only apron I know of that has a 6-pointed star on it is a Masonic apron. So this abduction sounds very much so like Masons are showing up to abduct the guy. Now again, Freemasons abducting people to try to take their body because, you know, the Mason's a 90, 95-year-old guy, and so a 40-year-old body is probably just fine. I know this sounds pretty ridiculous and crazy. You know who doesn't think it's ridiculous and crazy? Freemasons. Like the guy who wrote this book and talks about all the different incarnations and reincarnations. These people don't think that this is a joke. They think that it's entirely serious. So is it possible that there's 90, 95-year-old Freemasons or Rosicrucians who are trying to achieve this? And does that explain some of the amnesias and disappearances that so far are completely inexplicable? Maybe there's a connection there. So maybe it's not UFOs and Bigfoot. Maybe it's something a little more sinister. Andrew Lang says, the grave of the prophet was never known, and Saint Germain may have insinuated that he began a new avatar in a cleft of Mount Pisgah. He was capable of it. And so this is exactly what he's saying. He's taken on a new avatar, and that he was capable of it. So is this complete crazy talk, or is this something that the Rosicrucians have actually attempted and been successful at? Let's read these words real quick and just reflect on if this sounds like something someone is writing as a theory, or if it sounds like something they're writing actually having firsthand experience doing it. To return to the moment, the idea of the wandering Jew, that some have derived the claim that the Rosicrucians have in their possession the secret to renewing youth and escape some notion of it in their writings. So this is the secret means of renewing youth. Even supposing that this strange tale was true, nothing could be imagined more melancholy than the state of this lone traveler moving with his awful secret through the world and seeing the successive generations like leaves perishing from about him. He counts the years like the traveler of a long summer day, to whom the evening will never come, though he sees his temporary companions at different hours of the day depart appropriately and disappearing to their several homes by the wayside. To him the childhood of his companions seems to turn to old age in an hour. He remembers the far-off ancestors of his contemporaries. Fashions fleet, but your unsuspecting youth is accommodated to all. Yours is indeed the persecution of the day life, which will not let you fall to sleep and cease to see the vanity of everything. Your friends of any period disappear. The assurance of the emptiness of all things is the stone as into which your heart is turned. Gray hairs have nothing with you, though you see them appearing on all the others. Familiar objects disappear from about you, and you and the sun seem the only things that survive as old friends. So at least in Rosicrucianism, this theory has been thought of and considered quite seriously, and it even has a name, the Wandering Jew. And the Rosicrucians basically strive to achieve this secret means of renewing youth. So I would suspect that there's some notion of credibility to the theory that Freemasons may, or at least Rosicrucians, may abduct people for trying to achieve this end. This image may be a big part of the reason why I came to the abduction theory. First of all, it doesn't look like something going good here. This looks like a Pizzagate. Something is going on. You've got a young person in chains. And it looks like something bad is happening to them. So, but one thing, he does have wings here. He's showing Kundalini raising up the spine. So maybe this is, has a different meaning as to the, this is like the spirit inside of the man coming out. That might be one interpretation. And that the spirit has lost his chains and is free to raise up into the sky. But again, we do have, this would presumably be the Freemason. And then we have a young person in chains and bondage who is going out of body. And that's what you would want them to do. Of course, you would want the body to be vacated before it was inhabited by someone new. So this image may play some role in this abduction theory. And, maybe this is a instruction manual saying this is how you achieve the wandering Jew status. You're going to have to abduct the young person. And finally, my favorite part of the video and the conspiracy, the connection to Mac Miller's self-care video. I know that sounds weird, but I'll show you some almost inexplicable connections between this video and the Most Holy Trinosophia. Not just in the video, but the lyrics too. So one thing I want to point out. A candidate for initiation into the mysteries stands in symbolic posture before the altar, with one shoe off and one shoe on. Okay, there's a big focus on this in this video. You can see that the camera is clearly just focused on, quite frankly, one shoe off and one shoe on. One shoe off, one shoe on persists through the end of the video. This is a symbol that one has been initiated into the Masonic mysteries. Next, let's look at this image where they're coming out of the grave. There's even like smoke coming out of the grave. And they have in their hand a spear. The tomb is also the burial place of the master of magic whose body was hidden according to an earlier figure. In one of the early Rosicrucian books is described a curious practice of the brethren. They are said to have periodically retired into their glass eggs, where they rested for a certain number of years, after which they broke through the walls and emerged again. And so this is apparently showing what would be a Rosicrucian, I guess, emerging from his glass egg. And one key element in that is the spear in the hand. You can see the spear is pointing to some ciphered text that Manly Hall says translates to, "When the sixth sign is the life giver, I will come forth." Now Mac here doesn't have a spear, but he did have his knife. So again, quite similar, and that he's using the knife to break out of the grave. Or is his hand here representing the spear? One of the two. And maybe it's just me, but I was shocked between the similarities between the Trinosophia and Mac Miller's video. He's just come out of the grave, and then we get I don't know, maybe it's just a coincidence here, but we've got two guys coming out of the grave, and these are almost identical depictions. And then the lyrics for the song just put the nail in the coffin. Sorry for the pun. But he is obviously talking about meditation and going out of body. Spend my nights hitchhiking. Where will I go? I could fly home with my eyes closed. I don't move my feet when I'm gliding. So he can travel with his eyes closed and he moves, but without his feet. Climbing over that wall, okay, that wall is the firmament depiction here. I think Pink Floyd has a similar album, The Wall, but this is climbing over the wall. It's peering through into the spirit realm. Swear the height be too tall. That one sounds like the Antarctic.
It's a 20,000-foot sheer wall of ice, but that's never stopped me before.
And then in the second part of the song, he says, got stuck in oblivion. If that seems like a foreign concept, please watch my video on Lazarus. Jesus raising Lazarus from the death of Kali-Mudra, his spiritual sickness. Lazarus was lost or stuck in oblivion. So it seems to me that this is a similar thing. Yogis have spoken about that before too. They said if you go into a deep meditation, never do it by yourself. Always do it with a master, because you can get stuck in that meditation. You can get stuck out of body and not be able to find your way back, or maybe not want to come back, because it's a beautiful feeling. And that's exactly what he says here. It's a beautiful feeling in oblivion. And of course, oblivion being used here as the word for the spirit realm or astral traveling. And from my own experience with meditation, this sounds very similar. I just connect and upload, watch it spin around. We're just spinning around. So according to me, there is inexplicable references here to meditation, and maybe Mac Miller was getting out of body with hallucinogenics and drugs instead of a natural way with yoga. It's beyond me to know. But the interesting part of this is that this was Mac Miller's last video before he died. Now, according to the news, he died from accidental drug overdose. So I don't doubt that at all. That's the life of a rock star for you. But this video came out literally just a couple months before he died. And it, in my opinion, shows what the Trinosophia is showing, which is likely linked to taking on a new incarnation. So, do I think there's a Mac Miller death conspiracy? Probably not. I think it's likely that he incorporated some of the symbolism and was involved in Freemasonry or Rosicrucianism, and that his death was just an untimely accident. But there certainly seems to be some symbolism in this video which corresponds with the Trinosophia. We've got the one shoe, the spear coming out of the grave, even the smoke literally making an almost exact match. But in Saint Germain's context, he's talking about perpetuating life through probably a body swap. And so is that what Mac Miller was doing? I don't know. I have my doubts about that. I just thought that these two images were combined with the other symbolisms in the video was almost too much to ignore. So that's going to be a wrap on the Saint Germain series for the time being. I hope it didn't get too weird there at the end. And once again, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm going to be posting some game development content, so please bear with me on that. I'm hoping that the game I'm currently developing is going to be able to earn 10 to 20,000, so I have enough to make another attempt at the North Pole now that I have my passport. So at this point, just need some funds for the for the trip, and I'll be able to get in legally. So thank you for your patience while I've posting a little bit of game dev content. Actually, some of the most popular videos on my channel. So people have appreciated those in the past. Thank you for putting up with it. When you see game dev icon, feel free to ignore that. It's for us Unreal developers. So I'll see you guys real soon.